And so for this problem, question 1 on part B of the exam, conceptually I knew how to approach the problem and use solver, but I performed every calculation correctly besides I did not change the objective in the solver function in order to minimize the utility under the tangent portfolio. And so I will begin to explain what I did on the exam. And so we were given 3 funds: a stock fund, a bond fund, and a treasury bill. And so I just inputted this data. The stock fund is 18% ER, standard deviation of 16%, and same thing with the bond fund. And I created this workbook prior to the exam, and the risk-free has an expected return of 4% and no standard deviation. And we're also given the correlation between the stock fund and bond fund. In order to find the covariance, which right here is defined as the correlation between the 2 funds times the standard deviation of the first fund times the standard deviation of the second fund. I already set up a formula prior to the exam, which takes the standard deviation of the stock fund times the standard deviation of the bond fund times the correlation between the stock and bond fund. And after I have that, I went into solver, and under data, solver, and I forgot to change the objective. It should be minimizing the utility under the tangent portfolio, but I left it as maximizing the Sharpe ratio in the exam, and I had the changing the variables for the weights correctly, as well as subject to the constraint that the net exposure must equal to 0, or excuse me, to 1. And so when I solver found a solution, and it asked me a couple questions. It says the weight of the stock fund in the minimum variance portfolio, and that was A, is 48.69%, which I had. The weight of the bond fund in the minimum variance portfolio of the risky funds is 51.31, which I put. And the expected, the minimum variance portfolio of the risky funds has an ER and a standard deviation of what? And so that's a tangent portfolio. ER is 13.38%. And the standard deviation is 8.71%, which I put. And the last one, the minimum variance portfolio of all the investments has an expected return of and a standard deviation of what? I put the ER of 27.22 and the standard deviation of those 2 funds. However, they should not be, that's not the correct solution, because the question is asking of all the investments, and so the minimum variance portfolio of all the investments would just be the treasury bill ER and this treasury bill standard deviation, and I did not do that, but I will show in the next video of why that's correct.